it didn't take long for the lawsuits to come filing in less than 2 weeks after the deadly explosion on the Deepwater Horizon rig that has led to massive problems along the Gulf Coast. We have a number of these lawsuits coming in. One of them filed by Brent Coon. He has taken action against BP before. Let's bring him in to talk about all of that. Joining us from Houston today. Brent, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Just to be clear, first of all, this is a BP leased rig, but Swiss company Transocean is operating this. You're taking action against BP. You're representing Stephen Stone and his wife. Stephen was injured in the rig explosion. Just tell us about his condition in your case right now.
Well, fortunately, Stephen's fared better than some of the other workers out there. He inhaled a lot of smoke. He was trapped in one of the layers of the rig and couldn't get out. There was lots of smoke there. He and some other crew members were eventually able to get out. Obviously, they're traumatized by the whole experience as well, but he has fared well from the standpoint of he doesn't have any major orthopedic problems, broken bones, things of that nature.
So what's your case here? Because let's go back to 2005 when you sued BP on behalf of your clients. You also got the largest OSHA ruling in history, over $87 million or $80+ million against BP, all about safety issues when there was an explosion in 2005 at one of BP's facilities. So does this come down to safety issue?
You know, it always has and always will. It's always a safety issue, and the safety is driven by the responsibility of the company and by how much money they want to commit to it. With BP, the sad history is, and it's a history that's been going on for many years that we have followed with various litigation we've been involved with them on, is that they don't seem to really care that much about the consequences of cutting money, particularly out of safety budgets. That's something they've done recurringly. It's something that we've been on them on. It's something that the federal regulators, OSHA, and the Department of Justice have been on them, and they just don't seem to get it.
You know, but BP would clearly and has clearly countered that. I mean, you look at the public relations mess that this causes, the loss of lives. This hurts BP financially and in terms of their reputation much more than money that you argue that they save, which you argue, and they would disagree, cutting corners safety-wise.
Absolutely. And the thing that these big corporations are get most concerned about is the reputational damage to the company. Obviously, BP and these other companies are granted access to our natural resources. As it were in Alaska, it's a permission to access our resources, and our legislators need to be much more conscientious about who they grant these concessions to make sure that if they are exploiting our natural resources, they're doing so in an appropriate, corporately responsible manner. And BP's never demonstrated an ability to do that.
Well, where does BP stand against its competitors, you believe, on the safety record, Brent?
Well, we do know that BP is the only major petrochemical company that's on the OSHA watch list as a bad safety company. Obviously, I represent many of the employees that work in a lot of the plants around the country. We do know that many of the refineries have a number of unsafe practices going on, but BP has a history of routinely committing the worst infractions.
Well, in this case, and your representation of Stephen and his wife, what is the safety violation that you're alleging? I mean, you know, these things unfortunately happen. We had the disaster in the coal mines in West Virginia recently. You know, you work in a risky environment and you do have disasters.
Well, you do, but, you know, everybody says that if you're working in an industrial site, you can accept these risks. The reality is you don't have to accept those risks. We know from the Texas City explosion case, for instance, we uncovered 7 million documents. We deposed every corporate officer around the world, and we found out that they had many known observable risks that they could have mitigated against. They chose not to. They just cut all these corners on technology that would prevented risks like this from happening. We know, for instance, in this well case, even though we've not been able to initiate a lot of discovery yet, we know that there are other backup systems to these blowout preventers that would make sure that if there was a bad mistake, if something bad did happen, that they could mitigate against the damages. And they chose to cut corners and not spend money. For instance, the acoustic systems on these blowout preventers that would have shut it off. Mm-hmm. They fought against regulations that would require those to be on there, even though Norway and other countries require it.
Is this action a precursor to much larger action by your firm against BP and the other companies that you're going after here? I mean, is this just the beginning and the end game is a whole lot bigger?
It probably will be. Again, our firm is very well known for handling these types of mass disasters. We have offices all up and down the Gulf Coast, so we have a physical presence in most of these locations. And many of the lawyers that get involved in these kinds of cases know me personally and know the reputation of our firm. And as importantly, they know the dealings that we've had in the past with BP. Mm-hmm. They've been our primary nemesis for many years, and we probably know how BP operates, why they operate, and where their Achilles heel is better than any other law firm in the country.
What's realistic outcome here for your client, Stephen, and his wife, and other clients, you know, if this does become class action? I mean, what's the goal here? How many years can this be tied up in court?
The BP case in Texas City lasted 3 or 4 years. Obviously, this could take longer because of the enormity of the contamination. I think right now we just have to wait to see how big is this mess going to be and how much is it going to cost to clean it up. The Exxon Valdez may pale in comparison, and if it does get that big, which is certainly possible, then you start wondering whether or not BP, as big as they are, if they have enough money to pay for all the cleanup.